Hey everyone, my name is Michael, GoodyReader.com, and today I'm going to tell you about my favorite 5 books of the year. Now, I read a lot, generally about like 3 to 5 books every single week, so out of everything that I've read this year, I've broke it down to 5 books, and it was really hard to do it, but I figured that these books I've read twice at least, and I'm really digging them. So I really kind of want to share my taste in books with you guys, and it's a combination of fiction and non-fiction. The first book I have here is How Star Wars Conquered the Universe, and this is a great book because it really talks about the advent and the mythos of Star Wars, but it really follows George Lucas when he was in high school and then in college, and I found some very interesting facts out. Like, I didn't know that George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola have been friends for decades, and the original Godfather, George Lucas actually edited a few of the key scenes in that film. I'm not going to tell you what scenes because I don't want to spoil it for you, but this book really talks about the rise of Industrial Light and Magic, Skywalker Ranch, and how really what Star Wars did for being able to pioneer a lot of the motion cap and all the animation that we see today. Small fact, when they did the Abyss film, which you guys have obviously seen, that was one of the first projects that Industrial Light and Magic had after the original Star Wars film was in the bag. So this kind of chronicles the entire, both trilogies, and what, how George Lucas, for better or for worse, played a role in all of this. So this was one of my favorite books because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and being able to read sort of behind the scenes and what was going on during that time and during that era was very important, and I really dig it. The second book is called Console Wars, and this book talks about the rise of Nintendo and Sega through the formation of their companies, all the behind-the-scenes maneuverings about how Sega USA had such a hard time dealing with Sega Japan, and how Nintendo came from Japan to North America. It kind of talks about all the logistics behind that, but it also talks about like the war in North America, in the UK, in Europe, all the big titles that really helped catapult both systems into being a household name. I really like this book because I lived through this era. I was there with the original Nintendo, the original Sega Master System. I had the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, and it talks about sort of every system that they ever made during like the 80s and early 90s, ultimately to Sega's collapse. So it talks about everything that has to do with the cultural impact of Sega and Nintendo, but also a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, which I found especially enlightening. The next book is The Everything Store, and this really talks about how Amazon really came to be, from a small startup and Jeff Bezos starting the company with just like a handful of people to the juggernaut that it is today. And so covering Amazon related news for Goody Reader since like 2008, we've been covering this company since the advent of the second generation Kindle. So this kind of hit especially close to the heart because I found that just it's along the similar lines as the Steve Jobs book by Walter Isaacson, in the respect that it not only fixates on Jeff Bezos, but it also fixates on Amazon and really how they started selling tangible books to they went to digital books, and then things just exploded for them. So it talks about the e-commerce side of things, the analytics, but also Jeff Bezos as like a person, a family man, and everything in between. So I found that Amazon permeates almost everything in our culture right now. So reading a little bit about the company and the man behind the company and the team is really good. I learned a lot of things that I didn't really know, such as the executive retreats, how hard it is to actually move up in the company, the turnover rate, like it's so hard for people to work there and actually move up in the organization. Something like 85% of everyone that's hired quits or is forced to quit within 2 years. So if you actually become like a veteran or an executive there, you've actually done almost the impossible. Talking a little bit about a fiction, Neil Gaiman is one of my favorite authors, and The Ocean at the End of the Lane what came out, and it's a short book. I mean, really, it's like 177 pages. It's super easy to read. I really kind of liked it because Neil Gaiman does something that a lot of writers don't. He kind of blends the modern day with, you know, sort of like a historical supernatural force. Now, without really kind of spoiling anything, I kind of found that this book kind of blended the present and the past in such a great way, and it was so fluid in the respects that the modern day kind of interacted with like the past. And yeah, I mean, this was just a great book. If you've ever read American Gods or Stardust or anything like that, you really have to read this book. And being 177 pages, you could really devour it over the course of a day. It's a super easy read, but I found that it's one of Neil Gaiman's best books, and you probably, you know, went to a Chapters or a Barnes & Noble store and saw this book. I recommend picking it up, stat. The last book was the first book that this author had ever written or wrote. It's called California by Eden Lepecki, and this was actually on Amazon's list of one of the best books of the year. I really liked it. It's a post-apocalyptic tale, but it doesn't really talk about how the apocalypse came to be. It's more of a story on the characters and how they're dealing with the situation. It's not the type of book where it's like Mad Max, where it's just like this crazy odyssey, but it's mainly about like two people surviving. California was basically a nickname that the main character was given because his name's Cal, and he went to an all-boys prep school, and everyone just called him California. So the title of the book is basically on the main character, and I kind of really want to go into the book and kind of tell you everything I loved about it, but I really don't want to spoil it for anybody who's really looking to read this. But I found this was an amazing book. There's not that many set pieces, so they're not traveling all over the place. It's like a cabin, and then they actually link up with some, you know, some people that they actually know, and it's turmoil, and it kind of really shows how with the absence of no law comes like this established status quo of like pseudo law that is not really lawful, but people tend to accept it either because they're trying to delude themselves into believing in a lie, or that they're using the shady things that they're actually doing for their own personal gain. So there's a lot of grayness to this book in terms of people doing things that they know that's not right, but they're doing it for like the betterment of the group as a whole. But then, you know, it's a great book, so I really recommend picking this up. It's not the easiest read in the world, but it's certainly a way better read than, say, The Goldfinch, which was one of the most popular books of last year. These are my favorite 5 books of the year. I hope you enjoyed me regaling you with the reasons why I like these books. Have you read any of these? If so, comment below if you have a top 5 list of the books that you read this year, whether it's an ebook or a hardcover like I am. As much as I write about ebooks, I still buy a copious amount of print because I like to give them out, and I can't really do that with ebooks. For GoodEreader.com, my name is Michael.